Hey everybody, you're in the market. Let's talk about it. Yeah. Today we're going to talk about Sauvignon Blanc. So what is Sauvignon Blanc? It seems like as good of a question to start off with as anything. Well, Sauvignon Blanc is a grape varietal, of course. So wine shop. What else would we be talking about? So Sauvignon Blanc, it's bright and acidic. It's tart and racy. Ooh la la! It can have beautiful mango flavors that come out. It can also develop these fantastically citrusy, tart grapefruit notes. But it can also be grassy. Not that kind of grass. Sauvignon Blanc has a big, old, storied history to it that a lot of the purists will tell you, well, the best Sauvignon Blanc can only come from France. But then the New World Order folks will come in and say, yeah, but California's Sauvignon Blanc. But then other people will say, what about New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc? Okay, these are all great, but which should you drink? And why does it even matter? Let's talk about it. Now, I consider myself something of a wine enthusiast, borderline wine aficionado. I wouldn't say I'm by any means an authority, but I will say that I know a fair amount about wine. But here's the thing. I started wine off in the same place that everyone else does, at the very beginning. When I started in wine, I began with big, bold, beautiful berry-forward reds. But then I got into the more nuanced, acid-forward, higher tannic content, more nuanced Pinot Noirs and Chiantis, things of that like. Finally, I graduated to bracing racy whites with high mineral content and beautiful subtext, wines that really express terroir. And that's a big word to talk about. We could do an entire thing like this about it, which I eventually will, trust me. Today, I'm not going to go that deep, but I'm going to tell you why it matters with each of these wines. Terroir. What does terroir even mean? Where did the wine come from? How was it grown? What was the soil like there? And, I don't know, how much rain was there? How much sun did it see? Was the farmer nice to it? We're going to talk about that, why it matters with these wines. So, Sauvignon Blanc got its start in the south of France. I'm down here in the south of my French wine section to talk to you about it. Go figure. Now, the south of France became the hotspot for this beautiful racy wine. The soil there, being very minerally rich, sandy and loamy, was the perfect environment for Sauvignon Blanc to absorb all these beautiful nutrients and then to express them in fruit. As time went on, the south of France began to create a type of wine called the Sauternes. Now, this took Sauvignon Blanc, blended it with a couple other grapes, and often would allow the grapes to start to rot on the vine. Yeah, a little viscerally repulsive, but cerebrally very interesting. As the grape begins to raisinate, so shrink up, turn into a raisin, because raisins, as we all know, come from grapes, right? It condenses the sugars. It starts to ferment even. But what happens then? You're losing a lot of moisture content. So the winemaker would then have to take those grapes, pull as much of the juice out of them as possible, and then ferment the wine. They would have to stop fairly early on because if allowed to fully ferment, the alcohol content of this higher sugar content juice would be extraordinarily high. So oftentimes sulfur would have been added to the mix. Some would even go so far as to add a dosage or some of the residual juice kept from fermenting back into the mix. So the wine took on a very sweet and appealing aroma, a beautiful dark color, and was itself very sweet tasting. Sauternes have become one of the great dessert wines of the world. That being said, what about the other styles in France? Because we all know light, racy whites are definitely a sign of the Loire Valley. The Loire Valley French wines tend to show off the terroir much more prevalently, allowing the mineral to express itself, allowing the soil to shine through the grape. What that means is a white that's racy, but very drinkable. Light, but still expressing beautiful levels of complexity. A fantastic old world wine. Is that where it comes from? Old world, old wine? Old white wine? Old white people with wine? What? So, we've talked about sweet Sauterre. We've talked about the dry mineral forward styles from the Loire Valley. What else is there? Let's talk about oak, because this becomes very important later on when we start talking about American Sauvignon Blanc. Well, what happened with a lot of the wines back then is that they were stored in these giant barrels made out of wood, because that's all they had back then. There wasn't a whole lot of options. You couldn't hop on down to the container store and get yourself a big wine storage container made out of plastic. So what they did is they put these wines in these massive oak containers, and then they would ship them to wherever they were going. In the case of the English, they often enjoyed the drier red styles of wine, but the Dutch loved those beautiful white. So they would be shipped across the sea to the Netherlands. When this happened, the wines were actually aging. They were acquiring some of the flavor of the oak, and oak becomes a very important part in the aging of almost every liquor. The oak phenols, the chemical compounds found inside of the wood, are often many of the same that are found in baking spices. Things like vanilla, cardamom, cinnamon, all incorporated in this one wood compound. So as this wood starts to leach into the wine starts to change and acquire new complex flavors. This was something that the Dutch fell in love with. And it's something that, when you flash forward to the American style of wines, becomes essential, because this was quintessential Old World wine. Old World wines were shipped in beautiful barriques made out of French oak. Well then, we're going to make a new style here in the States. We're going to use the old method. Now, you've heard me say Old World a couple of times already, and I just mentioned New World. Well, what are we talking about? Well, kind of like you might think, Old World versus New World is a matter of timing, but it's not space versus Earth, Martians versus man. No, it's not that at all. Old World is the old European world. New World is anything outside of Europe. So the United States, New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Chile, Argentina. I could go on for a while. The point being, Old World wines had a very distinct style. Then all of a sudden, that got disrupted in the 1960s and 1970s when New World varietals and New World styles took over the market. There was a guy named Robert Mondavi. You might have heard of him. He did a lot of the disrupting. He decided to grow Sauvignon Blanc in California. Go figure. So what they did with the Sauvignon Blanc in California was present it in the traditional style. Robert Mondavi wanted a wine that tasted of the wines he grew up with. So he took the Sauv Blanc, which grew beautifully in Northern California, and then he aged it for a short amount of time in oak barrels. Now, he didn't want people who were nose in the air, ooh, winos of the highest order, drinking his wine and poo-pooing it just because it came from California. So he said, this isn't an Old World grape varietal. I've created my own. I'm going to call it Fumé Blanc. And he sold a lot of it. A lot of it. So much wine. He's rich. His family is rich. So much wine. Now, Fumé Blanc, you and I know today, is just Sauvignon Blanc, but it was done in Old World style. This lasted for quite a while. Flash forward to the 90s, and it started to fall out of fashion. Folks started to realize that there were whole other swaths of beautiful varieties of white wine out there, and they started to experiment. Honestly, it was a great time to be a wine enthusiast. Heck, I think there was even a magazine that came about talking about wine and the enthusiasm for it. Well, anyway, that was a thing. White wine styles began to evolve, and surely enough, New World places started planting Sauvignon Blanc much the way California had in the 70s. Probably the most prevalent and the most well-known are New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs. Now, in contrast to the traditional Old World style of the American California Sauvignon Blanc, the New Zealand style went for the freshest, most beautiful, bright expression they possibly could, because their soil allowed them to do that. Rich, warm, beautiful, baked, sandy soils that allowed the fruit to develop this wonderful tropical note to it. The mineral content of the sand being expressed in those grapes was fantastic. So today we have these wonderful, bright Sauvignon Blancs coming from New Zealand. Contrast that to the American, which had a treatment of oak. It treated the wines much in the same French style as before, caused a response in the Californian winemakers into them embracing this unoaked style, getting more into the terroir of their fruit. Beautiful grapefruit, bright, lacy, racy. Wonderful tropical notes, again, mineral forward, and delicious. Two contrasting styles. The old world is still the old world, and they're still doing their thing. They have their place. But I have to say, the new world has definitely brought something wonderful to the forefront of the winemaking world. It's something that we should all be able to enjoy. So which is it? Are we going to drink the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc? Are we going to enjoy the California Classic? Or are we going to get into the wonderful, beautiful, old world French style? They're all right. It depends on what you like. Do you want something that's got more grapefruit in it? Sure, go for the California stuff. Do you want something that's going to express minerality, be super light, almost effervescent? Go for the French style. Do you love tropical fruit? Do you want to have a wonderful afternoon out on the patio by the pool? Drink the New Zealand. None of them are wrong. They're all good in their own way, and you should enjoy all of them too. Don't be like I was when I was a college student. I like to think of myself as an aged toddler at that point, and think that Sauvignon Blanc is only going to smell like stinky old cat pee and taste like sour grapefruits. I was a disturbed young man. So very disturbed. I got better though. The point is, Sauvignon Blanc can be so many things, and it can be so fantastic. Don't let one impression of Sauvignon Blanc steer you clear of an entire varietal. Give each one a try. They all have their merits, and they all fit into your wine cellar in some way or another. So check them out. Well guys, there you go. I didn't want this video to be too long, but I wanted to start talking about some awesome grape varietals that I think you should be enjoying right now. Of course, I have my favorites, but I'd love to talk to you about them and see what you like. Come into the shop. I do have a tasting going on the 21st, Tuesday the 21st. We're going to be doing Cru 9 wines. We're going to be showing off some rosé. We've got a Chardonnay. We've got a Pinot Noir. We'll probably be throwing something else in to surprise you. I've got a 4-course meal that comes with the tasting, all for $55. You get 4 courses of food. You're going to have 4 courses of wine. You're going to get to talk via Zoom with myself and Faith of Cru 9 Wines. And we're going to tell you all about her stuff and why we do what we do. So don't forget to check that out. Give me a call here at the market. You can get online, send me an email. Do whatever makes you happy. Well, not whatever makes you happy. I mean, if it involves breaking the law, probably don't do that, but you get my point. Okay, guys. Have a great day. Thank you so much.